What's good, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Goats of Growth. Please subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already. And like always, the J. David Group, which is my company, is sponsoring this episode. We help recruit today's go-to-market teams that will lead the next generation of unicorns. Email me, web@thejdavidgroup.com, to learn more about how we can help. I should also let you know that I'm working on a book called The Goats of Growth, the untold stories of the greatest revenue leaders of all time. That's due out at the end of next year. So please follow me on LinkedIn to learn more about that. Now, my guest today is Ken Ferguson. He is the Chief Revenue Officer of Virtualytics, which offers an innovative next generation enterprise AI, machine learning, and 3D data visual solution. Ken, welcome to Overquota. Sorry, everybody used to be called Overquota. Welcome to the Goats of Growth.
Hey, no, thanks, Jay. And what a great name. I think Goats of Growth is, I just want to say that over and over again every time I hear it. So that's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And for those of you who've listened to this regularly, and you, by the way, would have heard a cold intro discussing or explaining why I changed the name from Overquota to Goats of Growth. So bear with me if it slips out every once in a while. It's 103 episodes of Overquota. And this is like, I think, the second or third one of the Goats of Growth. So nevertheless, welcome. So let's start with what I just ended with there. Explain to me more about Virtualytics, and then also what compelled you to join when you did.
It's great question. So so Virtualytics is one of those companies. It's super interesting how I got connected to it, but also the problem they were trying to solve is something that I had seen in my career for the last 20-25 years. Virtualytics is it's an AI platform. So it plays in the artificial intelligence area. We're really trying to create what we refer to as intelligent exploration is kind of the key business opportunity that's there. And what it is, it's using AI to go out and intelligently explore through AI guided routines that are built into the software, all of your data, come back with a signal that's super interesting. And then the AI then determines the best way to visualize it. And what we did that's very innovative is we built some patented 3D visualization capabilities on top of the AI. And so if you think of it this way, it's not like Minority Report, like the old Tom Cruise movie necessarily, but it can look at your data holistically. And the AI does what it does best. It comes back and shows you those interesting connections and deep hidden relationships. It then shows it to you in a 3D visualization that helps your brain see the data differently. And then we have the ability to visualize that across 3D, plots, kind of old school 2D, more dashboard type look and feel. And then also we were the first in this enterprise space to see this data in virtual reality and VR. And then the capability to push this out into flows. So think of it as applications that can then kind of push that forward. So we're out there doing some category creation, bringing new innovative software to the industry. And it's a lot of early days success, really breaking the mold of what people traditionally think about and how they use AI in kind of their everyday enterprise businesses. You also asked kind of how I got connected. So we've got some investors actually who are who are mentors of mine. So as we talk about like mentorship and people and connections, my background, we can talk about that even maybe later. I've always kind of been drawn to companies that are really trying to do something different. So not necessarily a cheaper, better, faster version of something else, but like really breaking the mold. And so I got connected through one of our investors, Keith Block, who used to be co-CEO of Salesforce, who was an early investor here at Virtualytics, and kind of clued me into, hey, there's a really interesting piece of technology that at the time was just being used in the US Air Force to do predictive maintenance on some of the programs that are there. You should really look at this. And so I was in a really good situation before, really enjoying what I was doing. But if you've ever trusted your gut instinct when you see a new technology, you meet a group of executives that you're going to work with day to day, and you say, I think there's signal here, I should take this call. And that's kind of how it connected. As soon as I saw the product, as soon as I saw what the opportunity might be as far as what I think we could do in the market. The people I was working with, which are some of the smartest data scientists in the world from Caltech and MIT, and then looked at the upward trajectory of this is a part of the market that's not being served in AI. That just kind of let me lean forward a little bit and say, okay, I really need to consider if this is where I want to put the next several years of my life of trying to build a great team to go out and take a market that I think is ready to solve this problem. And so that's kind of how I got connected.
Very cool and very interesting. And one of the things that I always listen to is not just what you're saying, but also how I'm interpreting it. And one of the things that jumps out at me there too is your connection with Keith, right? Because I think that if it weren't for that relationship, maybe although the technology, as you saw it, was really strong in differentiating, I think probably having Keith there in that relationship and understanding how strong Keith is gave you a little bit more comfort, if you will, to say, you know what, this is a good choice, along with the other people, right? And I think that's so important.
It is. It goes back to that. I truly believe this. People traveling, successful people travel in packs, right? You use those relationships and those networks, not so much to open doors always. Sometimes it's to validate, right? And that validation of somebody that you respect that has maybe not led you astray in your past has been a great, voice of reason, maybe in times of, you're trying to figure out a complex problem. When they come and say, hey, this should be interesting to you, even if they don't understand it themselves, I find that's wisdom, right? Wisdom is learning from other people's errors and also taking coaching and feedback as well. And that you're exactly right. The technology and the opportunity for me probably would not have led me to make a move to go do this if it weren't for that validation from somebody that you trust. And I think you could take that not just from taking a role, but like a lot of decisions you make too. It's like that validation of people who have like-mindedness or respect and trust each other, can really open up doors within a business to maybe take risks and do things you wouldn't normally do because someone you trusted gave you some great feedback or gave you some great direction. So yeah, that's exactly it. And that's been a key to my success over the years too, is listening to people that I believe are smarter than I am. So
let me ask you this. Obviously they had a need for someone with your experience, obviously. Why? In other words, why did they have that need? What were they struggling with? Or what if not struggling, what did they envision for the future and how they thought you could help them get to that future?
Yeah, that is a fantastic door opener to what I think is one of the most interesting parts of me making this move. Was I asked this exact question in the interviewing process. I was in front of the CEO, the CTO, and the CFO in kind of just a joint conversation. And I'm like, listen, you've got three of the smartest doctors of data science, maybe in the industry. MIT, Harvard, and Caltech are sitting in this room. Why am I in this room? Right? I said, you have all the smart you can handle. You had some early wins with some customers, and clearly they weren't sales. It wasn't a sales-driven organization. They didn't have a revenue team. They literally had none of that. It was founders and some early stage folks really helping them move the ball forward. And the CEO said, "Well, we don't have your kind of smart." Right? We don't have somebody that understands the people, understands the process, understands how to scale success in a commercial framework, right? So like we might know how to solve the problem for the customer, but we might not know how to put them in the best position to succeed. So, convincing them that our technology, works is one thing, convincing them how they're going to acquire it, how they're going to adopt it, how they're going to roll it out, and then how the organization is going to support them to make them successful and do that, 10, 15, 20, 50 times over. That's why we need you here. And that, for those of you out there listening, when you're, whether you're an individual contributor or a leader, when other people realize what they don't have, instead of all telling you all the things that they do have, you're probably working with people that, number one, will succeed, but number two, are are more interested in winning than being right, maybe necessarily on their vision, right? And they want to scale something, and they look for what don't we have and how can we fill that hole. And so for at least for them, I think they felt like I filled that hole, which was, how do I get an army of people who can, not only go sell things, but help people adopt, the technology and scale it, scale the revenue, scale the success, and then get the right people in the right spots to take all this great technology and turn it into a business, not just a great idea. And I don't know, that rang true with me really in the first couple of conversations, as they were self-aware and know what they didn't have at their fingertips, which was a people-oriented, revenue-oriented part of the leadership team that could really point all this great work towards what would become a great business.
So where do you begin, right? Given that as a backdrop, and knowing that that's the mandate for you to grow the team, grow revenue, bring this thing to market at scale, where do you begin? Is it with the people? Is it with talking to their customers that already exist and figuring out why they bought and what else they need? Where do you begin to grow it when you have this blank canvas, if you will, to do what they're asking you to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first thing I really tried to do, and I believe I was right. I mean, I always think there's many ways to get to the same place,
Right.
but there's always the most efficient path. And for me, the most efficient path was first just understand the problem you're trying to solve as a company, right? Like, and I don't even mean that like the solution or the technology, but like, what do you believe that's unique that causes you to believe there's an opportunity here? What is that problem? And what's the distance between, kind of where we are and where we need to get to say we're fixing that problem or we're turning this into a scalable business. And for me, it was understanding what are the use cases, like what are the things that we're trying to solve, like what industries, and once I get a framework for that, that then informs probably the most important part, which is what team do I need to build, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I can build a team to solve that problem, no matter what happens along the way, I probably can get to where I want to go. But if I start with the technology, or I start with the market and what the market, if you would have asked, people 150 years ago, what they were looking for in terms of transportation, they'd probably said faster horses, Ford said, instead of, they wouldn't ask for a car. So I'm not one of those guys that goes, oh, let's go do some market testing and figure out all that. No. What problem do you think will get people to be parted with their money to invest in your technology? And then figure out what kind of people, like what's the core, set of individuals across the go-to-market spectrum, that are going to maybe best position what we need to do, get us in the door, run the right kinds of sales efforts, and operate the business in a way that creates customer success for our customers. How do we do that? And so for me, that was the first two things I did: zero in on what problem I'm trying to solve, and then what kind of team, because I built many different teams, over the last several years, depending on that outcome, right? So, that ideal rep profile, that ideal marketing approach, because there's no one size fits all. You really have to understand the problem set before you go build the team, because I think a lot of mistakes leaders make is they just take the same crew with them everywhere they go, right? You just pick up shop and go. And sometimes some people aren't really the right people for that, that maybe that part of the industry, maybe the size of customers that you're selling to, or even the stage of the company you're in. So you just really have to zero on those two things, in my opinion, if you're starting with a blank slate. If you're solving the wrong problem with the wrong people, you're probably not going to get there. But if you got the right people, a lot of paths will get you where you need to go.
And well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I won't even say anything. I'm going to go on to my next question to see if it comes up in the conversation. But you mentioned category creation initially, right? And I would imagine that when you are a category creator, to your point with what you just said, it's probably a different kind of profile than someone who, frankly, is not a category creator, right? Who, is in the saturated industry and the playbooks have already been written. So how does that dovetail with the right profile, right? So you're a category creator. If you're looking for people who need to be selling in the category creation motion, what do they look like? Where do you begin?
That's the billion-dollar question. Literally, it's you've got to be able to find people. If you're going to go if you're going to go into a market that's very crowded, which AI, like everything's AI now, right? So everyone's got AI on, because that gets you a better valuation with the VCs. There's all kinds of reasons why everything's AI. But AI is such a crowded space. I knew immediately for us to make a splash, we had to carve out what was unique. And that's why, and I didn't know that we had our own category when I got here. I wish I was that smart to have figured out, oh, this is its own category. It took a couple months of going out and running some sales calls, running some plays, hitting your head on the wall a couple times, realizing this isn't unique, this isn't interesting. Other people do these things. Once we got into it, and we realized, you know what, and we named it, this is a marketing meeting. We're sitting down like, what do we call this thing? It's intelligent exploration. And it was like, oh, that's a great explanation for what we do. Once we figured out that that was there, it reinformed what kind of team we needed to build. And you need to be, number one, you have to be super curious, right? So you have to be able to ask a lot of smart, curious questions early in a conversation with somebody, even in your marketing and how you're thinking about it. You need to be very confident and very sure in the parts of what you do that are unique only to you. And you got to be okay with having a belief. Like, you got to have reps and marketers that have a belief that what they're doing is innovative, it's different, it's new. And being able to stick to that talk track and not go down these other roads of cheaper, better, faster, trying to compete on other people's territories, but saying, we're going to run this play because we believe in it. And so the people that you bring onto the team, they've got to believe in the mission, they got to believe in the approach, and they have to believe that what they have is a +1 for somebody, not just a better version of something else. If you don't have that resilience factor is going to, the lack of resilience, more likely, is going to hurt you, because you're going to get punched in the face. As I like to say, you're going to find that maybe people are going to poo-poo what you say is unique about you, and they're going to try and throw you curveballs. And you have to bring people onto the team that believe more strongly in what you're trying to accomplish than maybe even the feedback that they're getting in sales calls or in calls with media where people are challenging this idea. Because by nature, if you're creating a category, many times people haven't seen this before. And so you go into a demo, and we had this early days in the process, people saying to us, this is how we knew we had a category. I've never seen this before. I've never seen this kind of technology. So you have to be keenly aware in that scenario. Okay, that's what that is. And lead people to it. So you can't have people that are just process people, that like you give them the sales process, or you give them the messaging, and they just run the play over and over and over again, and you churn out more widgets. They have to be resilient to take the feedback that maybe you're not as keen as you thought you were, you're not as smart as you thought you were, or sticking to the plan, which is, we want to compete right here because no one's doing this. And that's a hard thing for revenue people to do, in my experience. They want to go where they think the money is. They smell money and they kind of get off the path. But to create a category, you have to have a strong belief strain. And so looking for those people that when you interview them, when you're talking to them, they're driven by mission, they're driven by performance, by doing something different and unique. They're driven by what did they believe in what they're doing, like really believe in it. Those kinds of things are some of the elements that I leaned into to try and build a team that operates that way in their own lane, and they're part of the team. Everyone's kind of doing different things, but that's kind of where you have to start. And if you don't do that, it's not that you won't be successful. You'll just have a hard time building a culture that can scale, because what you want to do is not just bring on the same kind of people, but you want to totally bring on people that I believe can kind of further success by leaning into, repeatability, right? Things that, hey, we've seen this play work. Let's run it 2 more times. Okay, that worked again. You can't do that if everyone's coming in like a snowflake and trying to do it their own way. We have to have at least a common view with a open hand to how you execute on that common view.
And so where do you begin though, right? In other words, when you are evaluating them during the interview process and you're looking for characteristics such as curiosity and resilience and those types of things. But so as a recruiter, right, when I'm hearing that, in my mind, I'm hearing, okay, the first step is to find where those people, the probability of where those people are, right? Go to a higher probability of towards companies that have those kinds of people with that characteristic, right? That's the for me. Where do you begin as far as targeting the people that you just described?
Yeah, exactly. So two things that I will always point my my talent acquisition strategy towards, whether it was advisors that I was working with that were helping me pull talent, whether it was myself and my network or a recruiter, helping me recruit. The first thing you're looking for is if it's you don't know where these people are, you're trying to figure out where they live. You're looking for people that are in companies that have broken the mold, right? So early in my leadership, but middle of my career, Workday it was one of the stops along my way. I was there early days through the IPO, and that there was a time there where everybody we were bringing in had that DNA of like, we're doing something different. And so you're looking for companies like that where they were either a category creator themselves or they were disruptive. And so, when you start to target, like, where do I go fishing for this type of talent? I don't want to go fishing in kind of the ponds that may have great companies, successful companies, but those organizations were known for churning out innovative sales processes, breaking the mold, willing to take chances, pivoted easily. And there's not a lot of those companies out there, but if you look, they're there, right? And for me, that's where I started. So first target those company profiles, and then I have a rep profile or an individual contributor profile that you're looking for as well, that kind of dovetails with that, to kind of then get even down further to like, okay, once I get into that innovative company and I've talked to 3 or 4 of their people, what are the things that I need to make sure I optimize for so that I get the ideal rep profile if it's a rep that I'm trying to hire. And it can inform all the questions you're asking. You're not just looking for unicorns. Those people truly do exist. They're out there if you ask the right questions.
Why is different better? And what I mean by that is, so you're creating a category, the prospects or customers are saying, I've never seen that before. But the next question becomes, okay, but why does this matter? Why does this that's different matter? And which also sort of relates to what we're talking about here, because obviously once you hire these people and they are evangelizing and talking with customers, they need to be able to hold that conversation and answer that question as well, right?
Exactly. I always like to say, and it was said to me from one of my mentors early on, don't sell the right? Don't sell cheaper, don't sell faster, don't just sell better, because it's a circular conversation, right? Where you're just,
Right.
you're always chasing the phantom of better, cheaper, faster, all that sort of thing. Difference hard to argue with, right? So you can come in and say, you're different, and they can disagree with your different, and they can say, well, you're not that different, but it kind of separates the sheep and the goats here a little bit, right? They'll kind of pushing everybody aside, where if someone agrees with you that you are different, so when you get the feedback in a sales call, maybe I've never seen anything like this before, you can lean into different and say, yeah, that doesn't look like fill in the blank. It doesn't feel like, does it? And they go, yes. And now you've created a connection of, this is something other that you can kind of lean into. And then competitively, no one can compete with different. They can only compete with, a lot of times, lining things up 1-to-1, right? Where it's like, if you're competing on, well, your solution is faster. Okay, faster than what? And now we have something we have something we can compete on, which is like, okay, if it's a database, does your database run faster than the other database? That's a sum none game where you're either going to win or lose based on some things that you may or may not be able to control. Different, you can control. Different doesn't have to. Product is so different. I can control how you buy it. I can control how you deliver it from different. I can control the metrics in which we judge good by, which is like the how we deploy the software and how you get value from it. There's a lot of different that I can kind of control because I'm the arbiter of what of that message, versus when you go and you try and compete on other things that aren't different. And it's just like, I'm going to compete with you on we're better than them. Man, you can be outspent, you can be out marketed in a lot of ways that I think take control out of your hands, where when you sell and market different, it's really hard to defend against, right? People start to believe, the art of persuasion is selling, right? Selling is all about persuading people. Once someone believes something, it's really hard to make them unbelieve it. And so if you can get them to believe that you're different versus just empirical data alone, like it's 20% cheaper, 20% faster, 20% better. That's like a sliding scale depending on whether it's a data-driven person or not. If you can give them data, so there has to be value there, but that it's different. Good luck unhooking someone from the wagon of different. It's really hard to do. That's why people go all in with these big technology shifts, right? Is, they believe that this was going to change the way they did business, right? SaaS was that way early days.
It's very interesting. So what I hear you saying is that even so Virtualytics, just by definition and by virtue of the product, is different, right? If you have something that is, let's say, not different, at least you're not, in other words, they're not getting the same comments that you're getting. Well, this is different. I haven't seen this before. What you're saying is that find the differentiator, right? In other words, there is, even if it might be a crowded space and they've seen, and you can very easily say faster, better, cheaper, that there is strategically a way, or you should be, if you're in marketing or a CRO, to figure out how to actually bake that into the playbook as to where the differentiators are. Is that right?
That's right. Exactly. If you start to think about, everyone talks about differentiators and everyone's got them. I mean, even if you're a Me Too product, you're going to have something about what you do that's a differentiator. It kind of separates you. Otherwise, your business wouldn't exist, right? But when you can truly base everything on, we are I use the words fundamentally different. We're fundamentally different than X. It causes the person on the other side of the table to lean in and say, either A, totally dismiss you, which generally does not happen, but it generally causes the curious questions of, okay, how, why are you different? And then you get the opportunity to really maybe give them an idea they didn't have before they got into that conversation. You tell them something they didn't know, right? And then you're building the trust and the advisory component of, like, I'm giving them information. Nobody wants to be sold something, but if they're educated and told something they didn't know before they interacted with you, even if they don't need what you have right now, you've probably earned a trusted relationship where, like, okay, I learned something from Ken today. I learned something from Jay today. And I feel like that's the commodity different gets you, is you can start to break down the walls of the persuasion process to say, if someone believes that we're different, I can then start to hang lots of things up in that room, right? Like, we deliver different. Our culture is different. Like, these aren't even product. We haven't even talked about our product, right? We're talking about how we partner with somebody is different. The feeling of the sales call, then you get into the product, the look is different, the feel, the problem you're solving might be the same. We're still trying to solve a marketing problem. We're still trying to solve a maintenance problem, or whatever it is we're doing for the customer, but it's different. It really starts to give the marketer, the salesperson, the ability to connect on things that aren't just data. Because people make decisions in two ways, right? They do it based on data and they do it based on emotion. And different hits the emotion part, right? Just the belief strain of, like, do I believe what this person is telling me? And everyone wants to be perceived as innovative. They just do. And so if you can tap into that, like, and truly you are that, then you kind of won the emotional battle, and then you use the data. And if you are faster, you are cheaper, that's great, right? That's the empirical data that then, kind of seals the deal, if you will, where they're like, okay, what I felt and what I experienced, now I see with data. That's how you disrupt the market, and that's how you get people repeatedly saying yes to what you do, is that you engage them both emotionally and logically, right?
I love that. Let's go to the top of the funnel for a minute there. So that, or somewhere maybe in the middle of the funnel, when one of your reps is reaching out on a cold email, cold phone call, whatever, right? It's easy for the prospect to see the differentiator when you're engaged with them and you're on a call with them or a meeting with them, or they're showing the product. But when they are, when a rep is first reaching out for the first time, how do you, because the inbox is so crowded and messaging and all that, are you able to put those differentiators somehow in a succinct email or some sort of communication to even open up the door in the first place?
Yeah, not to give away too many of the awesome secrets. So if any of my BDRs are listening, they're like, Ken, don't tell them everything. It's great. But there's a couple things I would say to that. Number one, people don't want, I think we have screwed up demand generation in so many ways by, over explaining ourselves, trying to give too much data. I think curiosity is still the best way to draw somebody into your sphere, is making them curious. And so less is more in that regard. So you're not trying to do a data dump on somebody. You're not trying to, trick them into an email with, hey, your boss's boss told me to call you, and put some tricky thing in the header. That wins maybe every once in a while. But I think being able to say, hey, just being very direct with people, what we're doing is very unique, and I won't waste your time. It's in this area. This is the problem we're trying to solve. I have something that I guarantee if you spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes of your time, it's going to show you something unique and different you haven't seen in this area. And it might be data exploration, it might be AI. We're not explaining what we do. We're not going into, we use network graphs and all this sort of stuff but just giving them the curiosity to say, listen, your time is important. I know you get a million of these emails. Here's one nugget that if we just got the answer to this one nugget, would be worth 15 minutes of your time. We try to market that way, whether it's the BDR, the sales rep, even through our advisory network. We've got a pretty extensive advisory network that we use to really, kind of go into the more executive realms of trying to find that one unique thing and just create some curiosity with it to just crack open a door. Because we believe once we have that open dialogue, we've got enough, there to have a substantive conversation. But I feel like people are so overwhelmed with messaging. They're so nailed with all the buzzwords that we're just sailing over people's heads. Curiosity wins every time. Like I can't tell you how many in the last year, how many sales calls I've listened to on a gong or whatever, where they're like, why did you take the call? And they're like, I was just curious, right? I saw your thing on LinkedIn, super interesting. Then I got this email, and then a representative reached out and said, hey, would you like to know about this? And I'm curious, right? And so we try and approach it that way. I'm not saying it's the only way, or we've got it locked down or we've got this figured out, but I feel like people are so spammed and so overrun with messaging and cute ways of trying to engage people. Just the more direct and simple you can be with curious questions is going to, in the long run, build you a good funnel of activity that at a bare minimum, you're getting people who aren't just answering a cold email, because you offered them a cup of free Starbucks or, whatever the latest thing is.
How about, this is something I'm curious about, which is where did this point of view come from, right? Because at some point you developed this strong point of view of differentiating, which is, I like, it's different for me, candidly, because I hadn't heard this. When did you learn it? Was it at Workday? Was it just was it over a period of time where you're like, oh, this is what wins, differentiating wins?
Yeah, so it's really funny. I had this conversation with a friend a couple of weeks ago. He's not even in our industry, because they could tell I'm super excited about what we do and how, how I approach stuff. I think I believe is a little different, not completely different, but when I entered Workday, I actually entered Workday as an individual contributor, bag carrying salesperson. And at that time, we were facing two behemoths, SAP and Oracle, who owned that ERP space, and specifically that, our HR space. And the way we sold back in those days before the organization kind of got larger was super disruptive. We would come in with a very disruptive point of view, the way, one line of code, and, SaaS, all SaaS, no on-prem, no, all these types of things. I began to see a trend when I would go on sales calls as just, card carrying, salesperson, just trying to figure it out. When I came in and I told somebody something they didn't know before I got there, which at that time was that your ERP systems that were all just like a glued together set of acquired products was not the future, that there was this thing called SaaS, and that one line of code, SaaS delivery model with all the differentiation that they were providing at the time. That kind of approach had such a high hit rate on next meeting. Like they're like, because they had to know more. If you came in and you did a great job on that first demo and you got them excited, they had to know more. And I realized, and they actually brought in Sally Hogshead with the different is better than good, or whatever her book was. I can't remember at the time. And it just kind of clicked with me. Like, this is how you, like, if you're going to, you have to be able to sell, disruptive technology for this to work. So if you're just selling a better version of something else, this doesn't work. But if you're truly out there trying to do interesting things with disruptive technologies, the only way to sell is to create that differentiation. And so I learned it there. The next couple companies I went to, I've been a part of. So after that, Visier, which is a leader in the people analytics space, so still kind of in that people world. And then OrgView after that. They were all very innovative, leading in their space, doing something different. And now I've seen this pattern now, 4 organizations where if you can line up a strong point of view with true differentiation, and you can come in with that, strong point of view that's different than everybody else's, at a bare minimum, you can qualify in and out people that want to work with you. And that's a great way to build a business, right? Which is, I don't have to have the biggest funnel, but if it converts at the highest rate, and when we invest resources in a deal, we know it's because they believe. Whether we win or lose is going to be depend on other things. But, just getting an audience isn't good enough, right? And differentiation selling the different, to me, has proven to be, a real asset to building good pipeline and really not wasting the organization's time trying to sell things to people that are never going to buy them from you, because you're trying to ram a square peg into a round hole. Because once you've determined different, it makes it easier for you to determine if this is a client that's going to work with you.
Right. So let's get back to people for a moment, because, obviously you go out and identify the right people for this kind of a sale, right? When you talk about category creation, differentiation, all that, people that are used to earlier stage, presumably. How do you then motivate them? Because I know one of the things we talked about when we met the first time is, you're great at motivating people, high energy. Tell me how you go about motivating your team and bringing people together to start to scale and to build a unicorn.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is you have to have your own point. I think what draws people is that you have your own point of view, yourself as a leader, that it can be sensed. And when you talk to somebody, they believe in what they're doing. When they say that they believe in people first, where's the evidence of that? Look at their background, and do they have people that follow them when they go someplace else because they trust or they feel that it's a great environment. But I think also creating that environment it starts in the interview process, or I should say in the sourcing process, where you're really stating what you believe in, and that you do. For me, I put people first, and I mean that in the sense that the decisions, the filter I run through is, obviously you got to make a customer at the end result. Kind of to build a business, you got to make it. It's got to be about the customer to some extent. But for building the team, what are the core things I care about? I care about trust and transparency. I care about, being willing to tell the truth when it's hard, right? Giving good feedback, all these things where, you get on a team and you feel like I can say what I need to say within reason, within obviously boundaries, not only just to get my point of view across, but also to make the team better. If you can convince people that they're going to come to work, be able to, get behind an idea that leadership believes in, bring their best self to work, feel like they're respected, their voice is heard, and that it's a performance environment, that now what we require from you is performance. So well, yeah, we're in a performance business. Everybody kind of gets that. But that first part, everyone forgets, what are we investing in the people, right? Are we creating an environment where you talk well with one another, that when things go bad, do they get scolded for what they did wrong, or do we learn from it and then we talk about what we're going to do right the next time? Those kind of, I call it nobody wants to work in an environment where when they make a mistake or they don't achieve, that we can't have an honest conversation about it and learn, right? And then talk about, and you can't keep doing that over and over again. Obviously, that's the accountability part. But getting people on the boat for me has always been about, do they believe that what you're saying is true? Do they believe that it is possible to have a team where everyone is on the same page, like on what kind of culture we want, how we want to talk to each other, how we want to operate, and that innovation means you're going to break stuff. But when you do, what's the culture for fixing it? Because everyone says that, oh, we want to break stuff, we want to go fast. But then when you do, what happens, right? And you got to be able to show that currency of no, like it's okay. Here's the goalpost, or here's the box we can fit it within. If you're inside the box, it's a safe zone. Like, let's go break some stuff. If you go outside the box, let me know you're going outside the box. We might just expand the box. But if you can create that, even in the interview process where you're explaining to people the environment you see, like you want to have as a team, when they do come, when you do convince someone to come on the journey, if you follow through with it, in the darkest of times and the best of times, you don't lose the engagement of the team. And when you're in an early stage company or even a scale up, if you don't have engagement and you don't have people leaning in, and you don't have people doing things for the right reasons at the right times, consistently, eventually you will lose, right? Because it's a people game. This is like building teams. It sounds so silly to say it out loud, but building teams is about people. And it's like, when you take that out of it and you make everybody a production unit, and that's the only way you manage them. Production matters, performance matters. If you get the first part right, the second part tends to take care of itself if you've got a good management structure. And I think we flipped that. We say all these wonderful things, and I'm super politically incorrect on this one. Drives me nuts when you hear all the, kind of the, the HR language about how we're supposed to talk to people. But then when you get in that organization, it never plays out that way. It's the same old game. People need to see that you mean what you say what you mean, and you follow through on treating people as a part of the team and not assets, right? And when you do that, in 2022, I will tell you, people will walk over broken glass for you, and they will go the extra mile. They will stay up late and work on the proposal, not just because they're going to get a commission check, but because they believe in what we're doing, and they believe in the people they're working with. And I think that's a lost art in many cases in building teams, especially early stage, is, are you for the people more than you're for the mission? And if you can play that right, the balance of that right, you can achieve the mission and build great teams. You don't have to sacrifice one or the other. And I think a lot of revenue leaders feel that pressure that they've got to sacrifice one for the other, and the great ones don't, right? They figure out the balance, and there's always performance. There's always going to be performance issues. You're always going to have them. How you deal with those matter too, right? Are you consistent? So I don't know, that's, I can hear I get super excited about this part, because I feel like this is my superpower, I think, in leading is, people believe you when they say, I've got your back, right? If you're doing the things you need to be doing, I've got your back. If you don't, let's talk about it. And then at some point, there's always an end game here where, we all have to kind of do what we signed up to do, and we all have to achieve our mission together. But I don't know. I feel like so many leaders blow past the first part. They just do. And it's the big miss. It's the part where if you get the people and the team building part right, getting them to perform is actually the easy part.
I think, to your point, I think people can be part of the mission, right? Because you can't achieve the mission of growth and revenue, all that, without the people. I posted something about something similar to this on LinkedIn last week, or maybe this week actually. And it was just a question that I threw out there. But when I did a search on LinkedIn for just simply account executive within the computer software industry, right? And I know sometimes they could fall under information technology and services and computer network and security, all that. There's so many different things, but I just did account executive, say 8 regions within the United States. And I, without any filter, and it came back to like 19,000. Then when I put the filter on of been with the company for at least 2 years, it went from 19,000 down to 6,000, right? So it cut by roughly 70%, right? And the question that I put out there is it a challenge with the reps, right? The account executives who are underperforming and lack motivation, intelligence, and grit and all that stuff? Or do we have a leadership problem where we lack coaching, development, training, and just general leading. What is your thought of that when I hear you when you hear me say that?
Yeah, I'm one of these guys. I just don't feel like the motivation. I don't feel like the motivation is rarely the problem. I think people are motivated for a bunch of reasons. Number one, everybody wants to be part of a winning team. Everybody wants to make money. Everybody has personal and financial goals. So I think a lot of times, us as leaders, we miss the first part, right? Which is, what are we doing to invest in these people that makes them turn they're going to be motivated by something if you hired well, right? Have them be motivated towards the things that you put up as the things that we're trying to do, rather than be motivated by their own things. So for us, if we lead them well, we coach them well, we tell them what we expect, we hold them accountable to those things, and then we give them space to do their job. I feel like that motivation then becomes pointed towards our mission, right, versus their own personal mission, right? And I think I think it's the investment of the leader in the people, of leading and coaching and directing us, keeping us focused and keeping people encouraged. I think we spend more time telling people what they're doing wrong instead of encouraging the things that they're doing right. And and I think that creates trust. It's a leadership philosophy that says, if I can just get people to do what they do really, really well more often, they have less time to do the things they do wrong. If you only focus on, like, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, they may not be good at that, right? And they're going to take all that energy and try and do something they may never, ever get really great at. And I just need them to be average there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then great at what you're great at. I think, speaking to that, coaching into their greatness, coaching into what they do well, and trying to get them to do more of it tends to work. Now, you have to correct bad behavior. That's a different conversation, but that drive will get people to feel like they're making movement even when it feels like they're not. And that's where you get engagement. That's where you get motivation. People then take their personal motivations, they connect it to what you're trying to get them to do. And now we've got a relationship where we're all winning, right? We're all pointed in the same direction, versus like a false leadership of just having all this confidence. Oh, we're going to take the hill, and then they see no connection to anything they care about. It's all financial goals for somebody else. Like, tap into that first part of, how can I make, even if once they leave the company, did they leave better than when they got there? Did you teach them something? Did they learn something? Whatever. I think those things, as a leader, if we leaned into more of those things, performance starts to then eventually start to take more care of itself if it's managed properly.
Yeah, I completely agree with that wholeheartedly, for sure. Something I always say in my private life, which I think applies to business as well, which is, happy people help people, and hurt people, right? So if you're happy, you'll help. If you're hurting, you'll hurt, right? And I think that is applicable here as well. Wow, I can't believe we're almost out of time, and I feel like we're just getting started. I feel like there's more. I think I say that in every episode, frankly, because I'm just very curious about success and how you look at it. So thank you for sharing all of that. Okay, let's get into the rapid fire 5, where I ask you 5 questions. You give me 5 answers, and hopefully the audience will get to know you a little bit more on a personal level.
That's right.
Number 1, what motivates you?
So yeah, what motivates me, I think, is being able to have influence on people in any area. So not just the work side of it too, but being able to take the things I've maybe done wrong, messed up, and being able to apply that someplace else keeps me engaged, right? And sometimes it's business stuff, sometimes it's personal stuff, where it's just like, you're working with somebody a little bit earlier in their career, and they're trying to balance family, and they're trying to balance work, they're trying to, a hobby, other thing, health, other stuff they've got going on. And for me, being able to influence that is the personal motivator of, I didn't get into leadership necessarily, for a lot of the financial and other kind of reasons that maybe some people do. I did it because I love to see people grow. And so for me, if I can have influence in any area of somebody's life, keeps me motivated and engaged. And, it's very, very close and dear to me, is that influence piece.
Name a big goal you have right now, and when would you like to accomplish it?
Yeah, what would be super cool would be this. We've talked a ton about, you kept, it's almost like a drinking game. We're talking about category creation. We said it so many times today. But for us to do category creation and have Gartner or somebody in the industry start using our words, right? That would be a great goal for me, because that would prove that some validation. So for me, in the next 18 months, I'd love to go from us out here kind of beating that drum as an organization to having the industry start to refer to a space that we created. And that'd be super cool for me. And something that's never happened. I've been a part of, unicorns, but I've never been a part of creating, that piece of it. So huge goal I'd love to see us achieve.
Would you say intelligent exploration? Is that the word, or what would
Intelligent
the?
exploration. Yeah, that's the word.
There
Yeah, yeah.
there you go. There you go. Okay. How many hours? Oh, sorry. Hold on. I skipped number 3. What's your most preferred way to learn new information and stay sharp?
We're on it right now, man. Podcasts. I'm a junkie, whether it's music, sports, and business. Podcasts are how I learn, man. I'd love to listen, love to watch.
How many hours of sleep do you average per night?
I would have said 5. I'm up to 6 to 7, up from 4 to 5. I've learned, now I'm 47, getting to be an old man here, and I'm learning sleep is a superpower. So I'm just trying to find ways to not be that guy. I love to just go. So I'm learning to kind of dial it back, and like I said, up to maybe 6 to 7 on a good night, up from 4 to 5.
Same space, my friend. Same age, same hours of sleep. Although I really struggle to get to 7. 6 is
Seven's on a
6 is
seven's on a weekend when I'm lucky, when there's no football games on or anything.
exactly, exactly. And what's your favorite thing to do when you aren't working?
If it's not spending time with my family, that's definitely the top of it. But stuff. I'm a guitar player, so I like to play a lot, different ways and approaches. So if I wasn't in software, I'm only in software because the guitar thing didn't work out. So I love to do that in my spare time. And music is kind of a driver for me.
Awesome. And I have one question that the last guest asked me to ask the next guest, which obviously in this case is you. So this is a fun one. If you could buy a professional sports team, which sports team would you buy and why?
Oh man, I'm so torn, because do I give the real answer, or do I give the business? If it was a business answer, this would not be true, but I'm a belief-oriented guy. So I'd buy the Cleveland Browns, my home team, to unscrew up all of the things they've screwed up over the last 25 years and get that thing turned around. This is the greatest sports town in the world, in my opinion, and we've got the craziest ownership, and try to change the culture. If it were to make money, I could give you like 4 other franchises that would do a way better job of that. But to me, I'd love to buy the Browns and turn that thing around.
You'd be the owner, so you would certainly make right up at the top revenue wise, money wise, once Ken Ferguson got his hands on it, right?
Man, I'd like to believe that. That's a great idea for the next business venture. Maybe I go buy a franchise or something. That'd be great.
That's right. Put it all together. Count me in for a limited partner.
There you
Well,
go.
although it might be the Cowboys for me. Okay, which question would you like me to ask the next person that I interview, which will most likely be another go-to-market leader?
Yeah, one I think that is a good thing for nobody asks these questions a lot. What drains you, right? So what part of your day drains you? Because at the end of the day, if we could eliminate a little of that and a little bit of things that kind of fill us up, maybe we have a little bit more energy at the end of the day. It's, I think it's always interesting to see what drains people.
I absolutely love that question, because that's something that I ask my team. I don't ask them as regularly, but I ask it often. What drains you and what gives you energy? Because as a leader, I think if you know that, frankly, you can design design the business where they're focusing on the things that do give them energy and less draining, which hopefully will make them productive. So I love that question. What drains you? Ken Ferguson, well, you certainly energized me by coming on my podcast. So I appreciate it. How can folks reach out to you to say thank you? Perhaps, are you hiring? And if so, for which positions, and how can folks find out more and apply?
Yeah, no, definitely. You can find me on all socials. So easy, LinkedIn's obviously an easy one. And it's just Ken Ferguson. I'm located in Cleveland, Ohio. So there's no other Ken Fergusons I'm aware of on LinkedIn in Cleveland, Ohio. Obviously all the other socials as well, Twitters and Instagrams and those type of places. It's ken.f at virtualytics.com. And you can, I'm always looking for great revenue people. So we've got a couple roles open in that area at the moment. So, feel free to reach out. Happy to kind of give you some, some advice there. Definitely on the selling side, for sure. And then on the technical side, we've always kind of got some openings in that world, in the data science world too. So if there's happens to be any data scientists listening to a revenue podcast, always looking for that kind of persona, and SEs, so solution engineers, that sort of thing. But all over the social. So social and email is a great way to connect.
And remember to put the goats of growth in the subject line or somewhere, so that will differentiate you and stick out of his inbox or messaging application. Right, Ken?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and definitely help Jay out here. He's got a great podcast going on. Tag him all over the place for sure.
Ken Ferguson, thank you for doing the goats of growth.
Thanks, Jay. Really appreciate your time today and appreciate the opportunity.
Goodbye, everybody. I'm cueing the music.